3 workshops that we had last week. We'll be there on the 2nd and 3rd of December. We'll be having our virtual conference over 2 days for the integrating cities, co-hosted also by the city of Nuremberg, which is where we would have been had we not had to remain all of us at home or stay put in the country. But if you want to have a look at what Nuremberg looks like, you can just go to Thomas Muller's background picture, and that's the city where we should have been. I would like to say that this morning it's also about interaction. So you're really welcome to engage with our speakers, raise questions, raise comments. In order to do that, you can just click the hand at the top of the Teams, and that will signal to me that you would like to intervene. And you can also obviously then use the chat. So cities play a major role in the labour market integration of migrants and refugees. And although national governments have competence in employment policies, cities, a little bit like the EU, are in charge of providing a number of services to the migrant population: languages, training, skills assessment, and orientation. And so we will be looking at, innovations introduced in this field, challenges encountered when ensuring migrants' access to the job market, and how the EU level can support cities' efforts at the local level. And so we are joined this morning by Laura Corrado. She is head of unit at the Legal Pathways and Integration Unit at DG Migration and Home Affairs. So thanks, Laura, for joining us. And we will also have the statements from the city of Milan with Marta Mancini, who works at the Municipal Centre for Labour Market Integration. And then we have 2 representatives from Stockholm, Shoresh Ibrahim, who is Senior Officer, International Relations and EU Projects, and Rebecca Hagman, who is Strategist at the Labour Market Administration. So thank you to all of you for being with us. At the end of this exchange, which will be open with everyone, we will then have a final conclusion from Dirk Gebhardt, who is consultant at Migration Work, and then Katarina Bamberg from Eurocities will be doing the wrap-up. So if all that is well understood for everyone, we can get started. I will go straight away to as I have a few questions for you. So recently, the European Commission published the new action plan for the integration of migrants. That was last week, I believe, that the action plan was published. So can you just tell us a little bit about that action plan and what new initiatives will be launched by the Commission in relation to the labour market integration of migrants and refugees?
Yes, thanks very much, Jean-Paul, and good morning, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here to present to you cities around Europe our new action plan, which was indeed adopted last week on the 24th of November. It's an action plan which follows the one from 2016 and tries to draws the lessons from that action plan in terms of what has been achieved, but also about things that should be new and should be a bit different and innovative. So first of all, it is an action plan which has a broader scope, as you might have seen. So it's the 2016 one focus only strictly on third country nationals, but here we also follow holders consultations that we have had in the past months. We decided to have a broader scope, so to have covered also people who have a migrant background, so can be second generation, but who often have similar challenges. So we thought that there were measures that would be also appropriate for people with a migrant background. So the scope is larger. It is also larger because this is, of course, is part of the Pact on Migration and Asylum, so of the migration agenda. Clearly, that was adopted at the end of September, but it's also part of the broader agenda of the EU on social inclusion. So it really works in synergies with other strategies and actions that the Commission has put on the table already, the one on the fight against racism and discrimination, the gender strategy, non-discrimination, the Roma action plan. So it's really an action plan that is part of this broader strategy. It covers different areas. Some are very much the same than in the previous action plan. Certainly employment and access to labour market remains a very key area, and I will say a little bit more later on this. But it covers also, of course, education. That's also a very key area for integration of migrants. And then access to health. We thought that this has become more and more relevant for obvious reasons, but also, stakeholders really ask that we foresee specific actions on health, access to health for migrants, which is often difficult, and access to housing, also another key aspects. And I think that this is something that also from the local level has come very strongly, like how to support access to housing for migrants, which is an issue. And then we have some horizontal areas and strands which are, of course, as important. The first is building strong partnerships with all actors. And clearly, this is something that we have already been doing in the past years. And clearly also with the cities and the local and regional authorities, this is really, you are the actors with whom we have tried to build strong partnerships through the urban agenda and through several actions, the financing of projects, of networks of local and regional authorities on integration through AMIF, for example. And we are now we will be building a stronger partnership with the Committee of the Regions also to act on integration. So this is really important. Of course, in terms of partnership, we are also, we have renewed the partnership with economic and social partners on labor market integration already in September. And we will deepen that cooperation as regards integration into labor market. Of course, member states are also our partners, obviously, national governments, and we will strengthen the work and the cooperation through the European Integration Network and many other actors, civil society, of course, and many others. So this is really very important. Then there is an area of funding, how to really use to the maximum the funding for integration, different funds, not only the AMIF. Another horizontal area is really how to foster interactions between migrants and the host society, which is also another key area. We thought that, with the emerging technologies, this was also an area where we should also concentrate for the future, what new digital tools can be developed to support integration. And the last area, it's about monitoring, how to better monitor integration. So this is really very briefly the main areas of the action plan that we presented last week. Of course, as I mentioned, employment and access to labor market remains very important for us. So we have included a number of actions, as I have already mentioned, the fact of working and intensifying the partnerships with economic partners. In that context, we have already financed a number of project with this multi-stakeholders approach, where all actors from employers to trade unions, civil society and other, and of course local authorities, have played a very important role. We intend to work also directly and more directly with the employers themselves to build partnerships with them on labor market integration. We want to support also entrepreneurship through different funds. We have also the new funds under the next multi-annual financial framework, EU Invest, which can also be used for this purpose. We also have foreseen a number of actions to facilitate the recognition of qualifications and validation of skills. Of course, as you know, this is an important issue. Many migrants have skills and qualifications that they cannot use immediately in the labor market. So they work in jobs where they are overqualified. And it's really important that we work on that together with the member states and that we support it. Of course, we have a lot of tools that we have developed on the European level to facilitate really and support that, while the recognition remains mainly a member state competence, but we have a lot of tools from the EU Skills Profile tool that we have been developing, support through the different networks, the PES networks, but also the ENIC-NARIC for the recognition of qualifications and many other things. We have recommended also a number of actions to member states, because as I said, this is also member states' competence to take actions. So of course, to use the tools that are made available from the EU level, like the Skills Profile tool, to use the funds, in particular the European Social Fund Plus, for the future, and also the regional fund for these purposes and for integration, to prioritize actions on labor market integration. To also raise awareness of discriminations that still exist in the labor market and take action to really limit that. This was also very important actions in the action plan on the fight against racism, of course, and discrimination. to encourage also entrepreneurship of migrants through both tailored programs for mentoring, but also facilitate access to mainstream tools for entrepreneurship. So it's a number of actions and support tools and funding that we have and will made available to further foster the labor market integration of migrants. And of course, we want to continue very much to work with you, with all of you, in that area and in many other areas, of course, because we know that you are also active on many. But of course, today the focus is on labor market integration, and it's essential. As also our commissioner said it, this is really a key step to then enable integration and inclusions more broadly, but really access to work, to job. It's really very important for the autonomy of the migrants, independence, and then to enable a broader inclusion into society. So I will stop here for now, and then we can continue later on. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you've already opened up quite a few doors. I mean, just actually one question to you, which is coming from someone who, is not necessarily an expert in this field, but are we talking about declared work here necessarily, or is there also space for undeclared work? Because I imagine that undeclared work it's probably a reality for a lot of migrants and refugees, and nevertheless a first step towards autonomy.
Yes, sure. I mean, the focus of the action plan is on people that are legally staying. But of course, there are other actions that are taken to fight against undeclared work. And I don't know if there are colleagues from DG Employment, but I mean, they have launched a number of actions really to contrast undeclared work in general of migrants and also of non-migrants, because this is really something that affects not only the people, but the labor market and the whole society. So certainly this is not the object of this specific action plan, but there are also many actions on the European level that are taken in that respect. We will also take actions as DG Home when it comes to preventing labor exploitation, and particularly exploitation from employers of irregular migrants. We have a directive which foresees sanctions for that, which will be reviewed next year. So certainly this is an important area, not the main focus of this action plan, but there are actions that are being taken in that respect for sure.
Okay, so we're focusing here more on the declared work, but you did mention also this gap between overskilled migrants in certain jobs, and maybe that's something we can explore as well. So let's then go to Milan, Marta. So what are some of the measures that Milan has taken to integrate migrants in the labor market?
Good morning, everybody. Okay, I work for CELA, which is the Center for Work Inclusion of the City of Milan in the Social Policies Department. This office works since 2000, and our scope is broader than just only migrants, because our mission is to help disadvantaged people, so vulnerable people, to find access to the work, to the labor market. So our users are minors with family background, with difficult family backgrounds, or detainees that can go out from prisons during the day for working, or long-lasting unemployees, and other categories of vulnerable people. Among these categories, there are refugees and asylum seekers. So our task is to follow up refugees who have the title, who are entitled to work in Italy, but often they find a lot of difficulties to access the job market autonomously. So we start by meeting them, helping them in focus on what their abilities, their skills are, and what their aspirations, professional aspirations are. The range of activities that we can propose to them are both educational ones, motivational ones, because many of them, of course, have a very traumatic experience during their migration to Europe. And so sometimes they are in a personal situation which is very complicated. So we assist them from this social point of view, and then we try to let them access the work through internships. So this is, I come here to the other part of our work, which is related directly to businesses, social enterprises, companies. That we try to contact and involve, actively involve in our project. So we try to find businesses which understand the importance of involving migrants and refugees in their activities, and that are available for a period of 3 to 6 months to tutor these people, so to help them in acquiring new skills, new competencies that these people can then spend also in other contexts, and that can help them understand the world of work in Italy, because I must say that refugees and asylum seekers who are in Milan do not have a very high level of qualifications and education in their home countries. They are mainly male, coming from Black Africa, Somalia, Guinea, Ghana, mainly this part of Africa. And sometimes they really have a very basic education, very, very basic. That means that sometimes people are analphabet in their native language, or they have a very elementary knowledge of it, of their language and their culture. So their level of knowledge, for example, of Italian language is not very high. And this also creates difficulties in their access to work in Italy. So CELAV works on both on 2 levels: the social one and the social one and the professional one. So these are the 2 phases of our work. I prefer to stop here and give you the possibility to ask questions.
It's
so
good.
it's easier.
So you're working on market pull and market push in a way. I mean, you're not just working on the skills, but also on businesses, trying to get them to understand the value of recruiting or integrating migrants and refugees. Can you say a few words then about some of the arguments that you would raise towards businesses to say this is important? Okay. You need to get involved in this sector. Can you say a few words about how you approach that when you talk to them?
First of all, we insist on the value that these people can add to the business itself. So our perspective is not a subsidy one. So we insist with businesses and social enterprises that do not make charity when they employ or they accept an internship with these people, but that these people will enrich their context. Many studies have been done about the richness brought by cultural diversity in work context. So we try to insist on this point, and to underline that the value is in double sense. So both for the person hosted in internship, and both for the company. This is the first point. Secondly, we insist also on the on the importance that these internships are conceived not as a working period. This does mean, sorry, we insisted that the person hosted in internship is not a worker like the others. It's a person who is under observation. That means that the person should be also formed by the company. They have to spend some time explaining to this person how the work must be done, which rules the person has to respect, because for us it's very important that the refugee understands how the labor market works. Sometimes these people are not used to respect, for example, to be on time, to respect hierarchies, and to relate correctly to the different levels in the company. So we insist that the tutor in the company always relates not only with the refugee, but also with the tutor of CELAV, who is a social worker who follows on the person all the time. Another point which is normally very useful is to illustrate how these people are motivated to work well, to become as soon as possible independent, because of course we start the project with these people when they still live in the welcoming centers for refugees in Milan, but of course they can stay in these centers for a definite period. After that, they have to provide for themselves for housing and for their living. So work for them is a top priority.
How many businesses are involved in welcoming migrants through this partnership? How many are we talking?
Yeah, on average, apart from this year, which is a special year, of course, because of COVID, we have 200 people helped by CELAV in this specific group. So refugees and asylum seekers, and so all these people more or less find the possibility to do an internship in a business and social enterprise. I cannot be very precise on the number of companies, because of course these companies are contacted by CELAV all together. So for all the vulnerable groups, keep in mind that we have 6 different teams. So the team working specifically with migrants is 1 out of 6. And the companies we contact and we have relationships with as CELAV are used for accessing job market for all the 6 categories. So for minors, detainees, and so on.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Maybe a comment from the Commission on the business side would be interesting after this explanation from Marta. Laura.
I am afraid that Laura had to leave.
Okay,
I had to leave earlier, but I'm not sure we have one of her colleagues, maybe.
Yes,
Agnese is on the line.
Yes,
thank you, Agnese.
Okay, perfect. It would just be interesting to see what how the Commission reacts to the getting businesses involved, and the kind of actions you have on European level in this direction.
Yeah. I mean, Laura mentioned it briefly in her intervention that for us, yes, working with businesses is crucial when you talk about labor market integration. And also we see that there are already many good examples of businesses that are acting to hire migrants, but not only, also after, because the question, I mean, we have, I think, 2 questions. One is to help businesses hire more migrants. But the other question is also how to make the work environment more open and diverse for them, so that they can also stay, but also they can go up to higher positions, because what we see is that migrants tend to work more often under their skills level. So it's also a question of how to make sure that they get to management positions, for example, and they have the same chances as others to get to management positions. So we have started working with businesses already since a few years, in 2017, through an initiative that we had, which is called Employers Together for Integration, which had the objective to show what businesses are already doing. And since then, we have been working more closely with them. We have listened to their needs. And our idea, I mean, we had planned a very nice event in April this year with businesses to discuss with them what can we do more at European level to support you in your work. And some ideas we had was, for example, to make them exchange experiences, create networks, organize peer-to-peer learning. Because what we see is that many businesses who are interested or would like to hire migrants, because, for example, they don't find people with the right skills, still they are afraid of administrative hurdles or bureaucratic hurdles. So they tend, especially smaller businesses, they tend not to hire migrants, even though they could bring the skills that they need. So we also want to put businesses in touch, for example, less experienced businesses with businesses that have already more experience in hiring migrant, creating support programs for them, so that they can also learn from each other. So, okay, we could not have this conference, but it doesn't mean that we will not work on that. I mean, this is one of the priorities we mentioned in the action plan, and we have a lot of ideas of how to do that. But the first step we would like to do is really to sit at the same table with businesses to hear exactly what their needs are. So this is probably the first step that we will do, and on the basis of that, we would like to create, as I said, I mean, some support mechanisms, places where they can meet, because we see our added value at EU level, especially in that, to bring, for example, companies from different countries to exchange and work together and learn from each other, or how they can open up both the recruitment process and the workplace more to migrants.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that reaction. So let's go to Stockholm then, and hear a little bit about some of the projects or policies that you have to integrate migrants in the labour market. Maybe to Shoresh first.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
I will start directly by just saying that when it's come to the labour market area, and also reception of migrants or establishment of migrants during the first 3 years in Sweden, is a state matter and not a municipality matter. I think that's very important to know before going into what the municipality does as well, since we are not allowed to work as much as we would like, and also not getting paid for the things we do a lot around migration. So I work at the labour market department, which is responsible for labour market action, adult education, and integration. And we work a lot with those areas, but also the city districts work with migrants around everyday areas like childcare, elderly care, housing, and so on. I will focus on what we at the department are offering. So the adult education is one of the main actions that we offer new arrival or people with migrant background. And within that, you got the Swedish for Migrants, the civic orientation, which been implemented for maybe 8 years ago, which is a course that migrants need to go to learn more how the Swedish society works and the system and so on. We also have developed for the past 5 years something called kombinationsutbildningar, which is you can call it a combinational education. It is vocational training together with language education. So it's SFI plus vocational education. This is done integrated now, and it makes it much more shorter for a person to enter the labor market. Since before you had to study SFI first, and then you needed to study the vocational education, but now you do that combined. And that's been like a really success because it's also in a cooperation with employees and workplaces. Beside that, we have a very extensive support for adult youth. Youth that arrived in Sweden with the age of 13, 14, 15, entering schools and not being able to finish it before they're before 20. So they need to enter the adult education to finish their educational background, that they won't be short educated in the end. And that being a problem also because of being like lots of dropouts and so on. But now we work very close on filling that gap between school and the adult education. Beside that, there is a unit that I've been working for the past 10 years on language support, giving during internship and when a migrant are at the workplace, because we could see that the lack of the Swedish language could create lots of misunderstanding from both sides, and also cultural misunderstanding, and those language supporters are helping to intermediate between employees and employers and new arrivals or people that cannot speak that well Swedish. Besides that, and there is lots more to talk about, but I keep it short. We have also the job centers, not to because the job center is also state job centers. And those are working a lot for the past 12 years when it's established, working a lot with recruitment and matching, plus other supports, of course. We have a unit where my colleague Rebecca is from, called AGS. It's basically with a direct translation cooperation with employees. And there you got the integration pact, social clauses in recruitment, mentorship, and so on. Rebecca will go into it later on. We use also lots of ASF funds for projects, like 2-3 year long projects. One of them is sustainable establishment for new arrival, and that is a project we do together with the job center, the state job center, to develop digital tools, health support, focusing on well-being, besides developing, of course, the adult education focusing on new arrivals and also labor market actions. And that will be, I think they just started for 1.5 years ago, and they will be going on for another 1.5 years just to see what kind of result they got. They are also a member of the Value Project. And then there is an extensive work on youth support, especially dropouts, where a big number of those are youth with a migrant background. And then there is very much reach out activities with that to reach out to those youth that are not working or studying. We have also a very developed platform to cooperate with associations and civil society organizations on a different levels, but one of them is to match new arrivals to associations that are working with sports or cultural activities just to enter the Swedish society, make it easier to enter the Swedish society. Those are some of the things that the municipality offers. But I'll stop here.
Okay, and in these broad programs that you have, how are you then able to tailor the needs for each person? I mean, I guess this sometimes boils down to the individual, or at least there are several subgroups within this broader group of migrants and refugees. How do you adapt and tailor the actions that you take? I would imagine that language is a pretty general horizontal action, but after that it just becomes very tailor-made, no?
Well, of course, in each one of those, I mean, it's a whole department working with those. So all those units do have their own tools and methods to do that according to the individual's needs. So when it's come to SFI, for example, Swedish for migrants, you start on a certain level where your language skills and educational background is, and then you keep on studying. And also when it comes to matching, you do the same, and when it comes to mentorship, you do the same, and so on. So there is lots of people working on supporting and going on with those activities. But with that said, I would say also, like Laura said, the mismatching issue or problem have been not only in Sweden or in Stockholm, been like a big problem for us back in time and also now, because the validation is not really working that well, and there is certain discrimination, especially against certain groups. So even if those have a higher education, they could be matched to a lower professionals, or got a lower salary because of that. And we do have statistics about that. The Commission for Social Sustainability a couple of years ago took out a report on that, how high educated migrants are mismatched to the labor market, and in which extent, and how many years would it take for people from certain areas, and how the salary looks from different, and where you live in Stockholm is also affecting what kind of job you can get, and so on. And we're trying to do better in that. But as I said, that is also the state's matter, since the job centers are the ones responsible for the matching and for the working, the employment, the labor market area, as I said.
Yep. Okay, thanks. And then maybe Rebecca, as you're also on the line for Stockholm, would you like also to share maybe one or the other practice or project that you have in Stockholm related to the labor market?
Of course. Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Rebecca Hagman, and I work together with Shores at the Labor Market Administration in Stockholm City at the Unit for Business Collaboration. And a year ago, we launched an initiative called Integrationspakten. And this was launched as an answer to Stockholm and the labor market in Stockholm being segregated. So when it comes to inclusion, integration, the politicians in Stockholm came to the conclusion that this is a challenge being far too big for the city to tackle on its own, and hence that cross-sectoral cooperation, collaboration, and innovation was needed. So during the first year of Integrationspakten, this initiative has developed into a member network of 275 organizations and employers from both the businesses, the non-profit organizations, and the public sector that all want to play their part for Stockholm and to contribute to a more inclusive labor market. The City of Stockholm is both a member as well as a facilitator of the network, and the target group of Integrationspakten is newly arrived migrants as well as others who are facing difficulties entering the labor market in Stockholm. Integrationspakten has 3 goals. Firstly, it's to support employers in the challenge of finding needed competence and labor force. Secondly, it's about enabling a fast track to the Swedish language, education, and the labor market. And thirdly, to strengthen the integration in Stockholm by enabling more people to actively participate in the labor market and to provide for themselves through an employment. And what we do in Integrationspakten is to offer a platform for inspiration and knowledge, the exchange of ideas and experiences, the promotion of member activities and their engagement, the possibilities of new partnerships and business opportunities, as well as a closer dialogue and possibilities of in-depth cooperation and collaboration with the city. And the purpose of the network is to optimize the results of the members' ambitions and initiatives through offering this platform for collaboration and innovation. And finally, members that are seeking the possibilities to engage in a more concrete way together with the city, are offered to sign a so-called job partnership agreement. And this is a formal but still non-legal agreement that makes concrete possibilities of collaboration available. Regarding, for example, possibilities to join the city's mentorship program, to take part in and affect the startup of new educational programs and vocational fast track, and to take part in coaching and mentorship training offered by the city. It could also be members approaching the city with its own ideas and initiatives concerning social innovations and collaborative projects to make Stockholm a more inclusive city. Yes. And this is just a slide to show how the idea of Integrationspakten is built with a member network. We are offering a number of network activities, and as you can see, members can then actively take part in some of the tools offered by the city within this network.
On the business side, do you typically see certain sectors as being very much involved in this type of initiative, and other sectors completely absent? It would be interesting to get a comment on that in view of also the supply of labour from locals versus what maybe migrants and refugees would be more willing to do. Do you see any differences there?
So far, we have almost all sectors of industries represented in the network. We have big global companies such as Spotify. We have small family businesses engaged in gardening. We have not-for-profit organizations and public companies, etc. So we are gathering almost all sectors in the society. However, we have had a lot of companies within the tourist industry beforehand. They were very much represented in the network, like hotels or restaurants. They have acted as a way, as an entering and as an entrance for many low-skilled immigrants to take their first step into the labor market in Stockholm. But also as a result of the pandemic, many of these companies, the collaboration with many of these companies have been paused, since they are facing very many challenges due to the crisis. So, and at the same time, we have seen new companies entering the network since they are in the need to recruit, also due to the pandemic. So almost all sectors are represented, everything from education to finance to tech industries, and also, of course, many companies within construction, within the tourist industry, etc.
And do you see that businesses in this sector are setting themselves targets specifically related to integration in their corporate social responsibility plans or things like that? Do you see has the city sort of facilitated that also to happen?
Yes, well, we see that the members engaged are both companies and organizations that already have a high level of matureness when it comes to corporate social responsibility or diversity and inclusion. But also some are attracted to the network with a low level of matureness in these matters. So that's also the strength, I guess, of the network, that we are collecting and gathering so many different actors that could help each other and could inspire each other, etc. We haven't seen that companies specifically have identified goals concerning these topics due to being part of the network, but that's also one of the main tasks for us in the future, to really define and to break down the goals, the vision and the aims of this network, because we need to find ways of monitoring and following up and evaluating what does a membership in integration in our network, Integrationspakten, mean for the members involved, and how does it connect also to the goals already set up by the city when it comes to this target group. So that's our big challenge ahead. How can we evaluate and and make it concrete and transparent. What kind of results does this actually lead to?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rebecca, for sharing that. And to the cities who are on the call, it would be also interesting to hear from you on certain practices that you have at local level, which is also a return on experience from what we've heard from Stockholm, Milan, and also some of the ideas outlined by the European Commission. So, you know, get clicking on that hand so that we can also hear from you. Maybe I'll just go back quickly to Milan, because it would be interesting also to hear a little bit your experience in relation to different sectors that might be more prominent in Milan, taking part in the program, certain types of businesses, or do you see it a little bit like Stockholm, that it's covered all sectors active in Milan? Marta.
Yep. Okay. Because of course we have to keep in mind the constraints of I mean which are the qualifications, the capabilities, the skills of asylum seekers and refugees who are very different in Milan from the ones in Stockholm. I had the chance to visit Stockholm and to meet some colleagues there also in charge of the same issues. And of course, human resources are very different. So this is a very it's a limitation that we have to keep in mind. So the main sectors in which we can put these people in internships are logistics, food services and catering, cleanings, gardening, the maintenance of public green areas, for example, and functions like workers in productive industries, factories. So as you can see, the majority of jobs that we can find for them, the working positions we can find for them are not so qualified, and therefore also the sectors in which they work are the ones I explained, I put in the list. Because of the crisis, of the COVID crisis, as you can imagine, many restaurants, many canteens in factories, in schools, and so on have been closed. So it's not possible to let people enter in these sectors anymore. And this is a big limitation that we currently have. So we have really some problems in finding the right jobs. Of course, in the cleaning sector, there is the new area of sanitization, which is growing and growing because of evident reasons. So some people are doing education in this sector, vocational training, in this sector, to be able to work in this field. But food services and catering was really a big sector in which we put people. So there is this problem now because schools are closed, restaurants are closed, not all schools, but some schools are closed. So more or less, I think I answered your question.
Yeah, no, indeed. And in terms of results, then how is this all channeling through your agency, your organization? Are you accountable to the city? Does the city set targets? How do the results work?
Okay. Yeah, we are part of the city of Milan. So the city of Milan every year more or less allocates 1,700,000 euro for paying the internships. So our task is to find companies, as I said, to select, to assess and select people going into internship, and then we pay directly the internships. So the companies do not pay the people. So of course we are accountable. So companies, the tutors in companies must always check the presence of people day per day, and we receive the registration of presence and so on, and reports about the behavior of people during the internships, and this is constantly monitored by our tutors. CELAV works on with a social cooperative. We make a public tender every 2-3 years for social cooperatives, and once the tender is won, the social cooperative, the winner social cooperative, manages practically so the assessment of users. They make the tutorship during the internships and the follow-up. And also the social cooperative is in charge of finding the companies and managing the relationship with them, doing the matching and so on. The city of Milan is in charge of coordination, of giving the guidelines for doing the real job, the real work, and to monitor, to monitor and to evaluate at the end. So the social cooperative is paid by the city of Milan for the services they do after receiving all the reports, and but we constantly monitor their work, because every team in charge of a specific vulnerable group of users is coordinated by a person which is an employee from the city of Milan, from the municipality.
Okay. Okay, thanks for the additional information. I'm sure that's quite interesting for other cities thinking about setting this type of project up. If I can maybe go back to the Commission, Agnese, if you're still with us, I'd like also maybe a comment from you on the sectoral distribution, let's say, of involved businesses in the partnerships that you set up on European level. As we've seen, you know, there's a difference between Milan and Stockholm on the kind of businesses that get involved in employing or at least giving an opportunity in terms of internships for migrants. Do you see a similar pattern at European level, that there are some sectors more involved than others? And also maybe then a comment on some of these city actions and how you think, as the European Commission, you could help facilitate additional networking between cities on these types of matchmaking activities.
Yes, well, on the sectors, I have to say, I mean, if I look at the companies we have worked more with in the last years, it's rather horizontal. I mean, I don't see specific sectors that are more involved. I mean, I think the companies or the businesses that are more active are the ones that often are struggling to find to fill their vacancies. I mean, it can be in very different sectors. We had relations with post and with train companies. So very often is where they have problems in filling their vacancies. With regards to the size of the companies, well, I mean, we are more in touch with larger companies, but I guess it also has to do with the fact that they often work in several EU countries. So of course there is more European dimension, and the contact with them is easier than with very small enterprises, but it doesn't mean that they're not active. I mean, for example, we work closely with organizations of companies, and for example, we work with SME United, which is the organization for small and medium enterprises in Europe, and they are very, very active also Chamber of Commerce are very active in Europe to provide support to small companies that don't very often don't even have an HR department. So they really have issues in dealing with sometimes also administrative questions. So I think, I mean, from our experience, we see that there are very different type of companies and also companies of very different size that are active. So I think from this point of view, I mean, we would like to work more with smaller businesses, but as I said, maybe because we are a bit far from the reality on the ground, it's more difficult to get in touch with them. So we work mostly with organizations that represent smaller businesses. So we have a bit less the direct experience of smaller businesses.
Maybe through cities.
Yeah, no, exactly. This is exactly what I wanted to say. So I think this is where cities are much better placed to have the contact with the small businesses that there are in their cities. How we can support this? I think there are two main elements. The first one is the funding. I mean, we have financed several projects. One example is the Value Project. But with Eurocities, but many other projects and networks of cities learning from each other, and many of them focus on the topic of labor market integration. So I think there is where we can help cities to really get in touch and learn from each other. And then another way to do that, I mean, one is through funding, through projects, and the other way to do that is through the exchange learning opportunities that we offer directly to cities. We have created, for example, 3 years ago, an urban academy for integration. So it's a learning program for practitioners and policymakers from the city level, but also from the regional and the local level, because we think the added value is really to bring all the different levels together. Where they can exchange, bring their own problems or issue, and they can get help from their peers. And we had in the first edition of this academy, we had the focus on labor market integration. So there, the second one, sorry, in 2018. So there we had, 2019, sorry. Well, this year again, we could not organize it because of COVID, but we look forward to organize it in 2021. And there I think was also very interesting because it was a very practical way of learning from each other. So a city would come with an issue, I don't know, like, yeah, a question could be how to engage with businesses, for example, and other cities or regions or countries with experience on that could help them. So these are two examples where I think we can bring some benefit or some added value for cities to network and get in touch with each other. And for us, I mean, these events are super useful, like these projects for us also, because we learn a lot.
Yeah, and the EU, like cities, are only there to really create a supportive environment. I mean, ultimately, member states are responsible. We have a question from, or a comment, I don't know, from Nina Opkes. Nina, please go ahead.
I'd like to tell you about a project in the Netherlands that I really like very much. This organization looks for businesses with elderly people who cannot continue, like small shops or a barber or whatever. They don't have children to take over. It's their life's work, and they're really sad that it will be lost. And he finds refugees willing to take over and running along for, let's say, half a year with the elderly couple. And the refugee will usually want to change a lot of things because he or she has a and I see how these old people really think it's nice and funny that there is some kind of rebirthing of their old shop, and are very willing to cooperate. However, funding is always very difficult for a refugee who doesn't have a permanent residence permit. it is very difficult to get financing. So I'm a dreamer. I could dream that there would maybe some European fund helping these enterprises, because all over Europe we see how nice little shops in our inner cities are disappearing while they were really important for the social life, etc. So I just wondered if that would possibly be some idea. And this guy, he says he will need about half a year or a year to have refugees adapt to our bureaucratic system. And if he doesn't do that, they're possibly broke within a year, because they overestimated themselves with regard to bureaucracy. But I thought, well, he is doing this on a small scale in the east of the Netherlands, but I think this idea has potential to spread, and that's why I wanted to tell you about it.
Okay, thanks, Nina. Maybe it fits with some of the actions on supporting entrepreneurship. It's just a way of doing it. It's connecting the grey power of Europe with the migrant and refugee power in Europe. Maybe then on this line, I'd like to go to Milan and to Stockholm to hear if you also have a few ideas back to the Commission then on how they can support your actions locally. You know, that we've talked about funding, we've talked about supportive measures. Would you have any specific recommendations to make to the Commission on this? Maybe to Stockholm first, Rebecca or Shoresh.
I'm not sure if Shoresh is taking this one.
You can both take it if you like.
Please, go ahead, Shoresh.
Yeah, all right. I will just start with, I mean, the support that we got from the Commission back is through funds, like different funds. We in Stockholm use a lot the ESF funds, for example, for especially working on groups that we call vulnerable groups. But what we can see, like comparing the ongoing work around ESF Plus, the program designing now, comparing to the last program, it's that it's less of focus on cities' need. For example, the regional plan for ESF Plus is now went over to the region to design, which the region, I mean, they had a couple of projects financed by ESF, but that's it. The knowledge about the groups and how to use the funds and so on are mainly on municipalities that have been developing those projects and so on. So what we can see is a bit of shift from focusing on target groups that are in need, like vulnerable groups, to a more what need do the region have and what need do the businesses have. And that's not wrong in itself, but you need to keep those two parts very close to each other. Otherwise, we will lose that extensive support that we've been giving to different groups through EU financing. And that we actually feel like it's a bit, now the program is not decided yet, not on the national level or regional level, but I really hope that won't be the matter as we've seen it now during the mobilization part. So I maybe would like to highlight that for the Commission to maybe put a bit more pressure on the state to engage cities within the mobilization part when you design the coming program for ESF Plus, because we will be even more in need of those funds now with the pandemic and with the labor market situation within the crisis. Beside that, we've been talking about that before within the migration and integration group, how different funds can also collaborate with each other. Like, for example, AMIF and ESF Plus, we haven't seen any, not on a municipality or a state level now in the countries, any any remarkable changes in that matter between those two funds, because the ones work with asylum and the other ones work with people have already their permit to stay, and there's need to collaborate because they cannot go on working in a different in their own bubbles. Yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
Thanks. An additional word, Rebecca, on that, or has Suresh covered the main recommendation?
I think she has covered the main recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And maybe a short also word then from Milan. Marta?
Okay, I would say that the most we need is funding for vocational training and education, like in the Italian language, for the Italian language, because these are the prerequisites to access the labor market. In Italy, not everybody speaks English, so the knowledge of Italian is not useful just for daily life, but also specifically for the work labor.
Okay, so the most horizontal aspects should be funding, that are really required for everyone. The language and then vocational training. Okay, thanks. I see a question in the chat, and Suresh mentioned this idea that the ESF Plus program should be still taking into account the needs of migrants and refugees, and not only looking at the picture of what business sectors might require or cities or regions. How then do you see refugees and migrants being involved in the design, implementation, and evaluation of projects, helping them, facilitating them access to the labor market? Do any cities have any experience with that, or at European level maybe? Do you have experience with that? Can anyone try and answer that question?
I can start from the European level. Well, we have just launched on 12th of November an expert group to consult migrants on the design, implementation of our policies, not only in the field of integration, but also of asylum and migration. And this is something really new. I mean, until now, we have never had a formal way to consult or involve migrants in the design on our policies. So it's a big step forward. I don't say it's perfect, because of course, I mean, we had, for this group to work well, we had to keep it quite small. So we have 24 members who either are just migrants who represent themselves and the interests of migrants, but we also have organizations working with migrants and representing migrants, and many umbrella organizations of many migrant organizations, I meant. So this is a very important first step. Something else that I wanted to mention, because it can be interesting for cities. So we have currently a call for proposals for projects under the Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund. And one of the priorities is exactly how to involve migrants and refugees in the design and implementation of policies. And there is a strong focus for the work at local level in this call for proposals. So it's really to help cities set, if they don't have it yet, to setting up consultative structures for migrants, to see how to involve more in the development of different policies in the field of integration, but also in areas that are linked to that, like education or labor market. And the deadline is in February, so there is still some time. So if you think in your city you didn't have until now the occasion, the money to set up such a consultative system, then this call for proposals can help you.
Okay, thank you. That's very topical. Thanks also to Richard then for the question. Maybe in Stockholm, do you have any consultative structure with feedback from migrants on your program?
We do have on a different level. I don't know, Rebecca, if you want to say something from the unit that you work at.
Well, I could just shortly say that when it comes to Integrationspakten, the member network, we are focusing, of course, on our members, and they are in their turn are working with the activities targeting the target group. So I'm not really involved in that, but I could just give an example. I know that one of the activities or projects that could be fit underneath the umbrella of Integrationspakten is the mentorship program that is offered by the city of Stockholm. And there I know that we are also offering like a reversed mentorship program that is instead of representatives from the companies becoming engaged as mentors for the for newly arrived immigrants, the target group itself are acting as mentors for the company CEOs, etc. So that is one way, and I know that I think that in the design of this program, of course, the target group has been involved. So that's one way of doing things in another matter and in a more innovative way, and also engaging the target group directly in the activity. Yeah.
And also, I know that on a city level, there is an advisory group. But that's on a very like high level. I think what we've been needing also to discuss is how we engage the group, the migrant group, when we design activities that are focused on taking them further into the labor market. Because I think lots of time we do projects from our own experience of what is better to do for the group or not. And I would like to wish that in the same way that there is on a point in the application to ASF saying that how do you work with discrimination or how do you work with a horizontal perspective, that it will also be a point taking up how do you engage the target group when you design your project, and that could push that work even further than just being a recommendation and creating one advisory group for many areas that they might not have a knowledge within it. So in each project, it's very special and very unique and targets certain groups, and it's only that group that need to be engaged in designing that. And I have pushed a lot since I had that on my table to work through design thinking, to engaging the group that the project is focusing on from the beginning and during the project. And hopefully when it's implemented, those groups will be also engaged in the implementation plan. But to making that more like giving it a structure that is sustainable, maybe that should be also in the guidelines for the funds.
Okay, so it could actually be part of the eligibility criteria of funded projects.
Exactly.
That is embedded in the very design of the program.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for that very specific recommendation. I see that we're gradually getting towards the end of this exchange. I see that also Muyan in the chat is talking about the importance of long-term support and the combination between vocational training and language. So that's good that all this is creating food for thought for everyone. Marta, maybe just a last comment also from Milan then on this consultative element, because it seems that this is quite interesting for cities. Do you have a way of getting feedback or involving migrants in the decision-making process?
We do not have a consultative group, an organized and fixed consultative process, but migrants are directly involved in their projects since the beginning. So before we start to search a job position for them, we first make an assessment with them, we first dialogue with them. There is dedicated staff, social and psychological tutors, and each migrant has his or her own psychosocial support, and it's a long-lasting support, as it was said in the chat. So since the beginning, they have to tell us what their aspirations are, what their project is, and if they do not have their own project, because maybe they are not so well structured, we help them to conceive it, and after that process, we start to search for a job position for them. So and also during the internship, they're always in touch with this social worker. So I think that they are directly involved in the design of their personal project.
Okay. Thank you very much. As we're getting towards the end, we'll have to wrap up here. But I would like to really thank Laura, who made the initial statement for the Commission, and Agnese, who was joining us thereafter. So thanks a lot for having been with us. Marta, Shoresh, and Rebecca from Milan and Stockholm for sharing your insights. I hope that was inspirational also for other cities. So thanks a lot for having been with us. I would like now to ask Dirk Gebhardt, who's consultant at Migration Work, to provide us with maybe some of his reflections on this morning's discussion and how cities are involved in this labour market integration, although they don't necessarily have responsibility formally. Dirk, some comments from you.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. I'm just I'll reflect on this based on a recently launched project from Eurocities Connection, which also works in one of its communities of practice on this topic of labor market integration. And what we see, what we have seen so far in the 9 months we're working together in this project reflects much of what has been said. Cities have a clear wish to be active in spite of national and regional governments having competences in the area of employment policies. All cities wish to be active for various reasons. One is that labor markets are organized at the metropolitan level, so it makes sense cities have the best access to understanding what is needed, and all cities face some sort of shortages, in different sectors. We don't always have to think about high-tech industries and so on. It can be, as we saw in our work so far, things, occupations such as truck drivers, logistics, warehousing, and so on, where local employers are desperate to fill vacancies. And now, one thing that is probably very tricky about employment integration measures, that it involves a lot of different actors at different levels of governments, and here cities can sort of order this, communicate to migrants, provide a first entry point, and coordinate the different actors. And I think cities are really the best place to do this, and we have seen in our work the classic example of one-stop shops, in which cities can kind of bring together the different actors in one place and thereby create a lot of more transparency, make the support system for labor market integration more readable. Now, I just want to highlight two things because they were echoed really nicely in this discussion so far. One is working with employers. That is one of the priorities of this work in this community of practice on labor market integration in Connection. This seems to be really one of the areas where we need to have a more intense exchange. And this Stockholm experience on this integration pact sounds really interesting. So how to create a more intense exchange with employers. because a lot of all cities have these links, but they don't seem to have found yet the best way to engage employers, let's say. They're still struggling. And the second one is the discussion we just had on co-creation, where we're just in the beginning, I think. We had in our last meeting, which was also our first meeting, we talked about an app that was developed, or that is being developed in an H2020 project called Mikado, that involves city councils such as Antwerp and the Madrid region, which was which is being designed in co-creation processes with city councils and service providers on the one hand, but also with migrants on the other hand. And that's probably hopefully a good example. We don't know the output yet of co-creation processes. And I wanted to make one last point, and then I should stop probably. No, I leave it. We only have 5 minutes.
No, please. I mean, you can make a last point.
We have, I mean, flexibility. Cities are in an important position to involving both, or understanding better the needs of migrants and the obstacles, and of employers on the other hand, to make integration support more flexible and maybe also faster for those, which are not all migrants or refugees that arrive, who can probably enter into the labor market faster, and who are sometimes kind of held back by standard integration programs, which say, no, you have to learn Swedish first, no, as we saw in the Stockholm example. So to come up with integrated solutions which top up this standard integration support, which we often have through national or regional frameworks, by integrated programs. And we have seen that in our meeting in Antwerp, that offer for those maybe 20–30% of newcomers who are able to access jobs relatively early, to offer some vocational support at the same time, no, while providing the language training, to profile this a little bit more. This is certainly one interesting trend to follow up, which pops up in a lot of cities right now. And I stop here. Thanks a lot.
Okay, no, thanks, Dirk. So possibly fast tracking some profiles based on their skills and experience. I don't know. Maybe that's also a controversial proposal. I don't know, but certainly something to explore. Thanks a lot. I see also Nina is suggesting an international exchange for refugees between cities. So I'm glad to see that this workshop has led to some ideas, and I'm sure that this is just one moment where we're touching base, and Eurocities through its various projects will be continuing this discussion and this exchange between cities. So once again, on my side, thank you very much to all of you for having taken part in this, for the panelists for having shared their insights. It's got me certainly well geared up for the 2nd and 3rd of December, where we will have our big virtual summit. So thanks a lot to all of you. And I will now hand over to Katarina Bamberg from Eurocities, who will give us her conclusions. Katarina, over to you.
Yes, thanks a lot. Again, quite the task after such an interesting discussion and such a rich discussion as well. And I really don't want to keep us too long, because I think there were a lot of topics that we've already repeated and reflected on. But maybe just a couple of additional points, just to repeat that. I think, yeah, this discussion, as well as the action plan by the Commission, it couldn't come at a more timely moment. With the COVID-19 pandemic, we've really seen that migrants are among the most vulnerable groups. They're really the first to lose their employment, and hence it's really important to look at innovative and ramped up measures as well to really support their labor market integration. I think another point that I would just take also from the action plan is that EU funding remains super important. I think also it was very good that we heard again this point about combining different funds, for instance, the ESF Plus and the AMEF. I think that's something that we will also continue to work on from the policy side of Eurocities. I think in general, it's also very positive to see in the action plan that really the role of cities as key integration stakeholders on so many different issues, but also on employment of migrants and refugees is really recognized by the Commission. So I think that's very positive. We've talked a lot about working with employers and including them in the process, so I'm not going to repeat these points. But I think it's also crucial to really involve all different actors at the local level. So that also includes non-profit and public sector organizations. I think that's also something that we really saw in both cities that presented here today, Milan and Stockholm. So I think prime examples of how that can be really done in a nice and interesting way. And it also really goes to show that integration is indeed a complex process and it really needs a holistic approach. We also talked quite a bit about education and how that is interlinked with employment, especially also the formative support of refugees and migrants, which can include training, skills development, and so on and so forth. Again, I think the internship program of CELAB in Milan is very interesting, and also looking at the social elements of formative supports to refugees and migrants. And then, of course, Stockholm's Integrationspakten. I apologize for that mispronunciation. I think that initiative as well is one where you can see so many different elements coming together to support migrants and refugees. What else would I like to mention? Exactly, one last point that came in the discussion at the end, but I think a point that's super important again, is to really make this an inclusive process and to really include migrants and refugees in the design of programs and measures for their own integration, because obviously that would make them much more efficient and effective and really take into account the needs of migrants and refugees themselves. There's a lot more that we can say, of course, and I think it was very interesting and rich, as I said. A lot of you have also worked with me and the colleagues on the Integrating Cities report. There's a lot more interesting examples in there and inspiration, so I would encourage you to check that out. And we're actually going to publish the report this week at the Integrating Cities conference, which is organized on Wednesday and Thursday this week. I hear that there's still time to register, so if you haven't done that, then I would really encourage you to do so. And we can, exactly, I think Ferouz just put the link to register in the chat box. And yeah, and then we have much more time to talk about all of this on Wednesday and Thursday at the conference, which of course is organized by us and Nuremberg. So I'm very happy to leave it here and hopefully see you later on this week. Bye bye, everyone.